Now it seems change is taking place inside the reclusive North Korean regime that has for nearly 7 decades been run as a tight ship under one supreme leader, currently 36-year-old Kim Jong-un. The young dictator has enjoyed a deity status with mystical stories about his birth and greatness and, moreover, an iron grip on the regime with every move and decision he makes deemed infallible. But this year, cracks have begun to show. After failing to seal a deal with US President Donald Trump and crucially ease global sanctions on the regime, it appears Kim has been struggling to make up for the failed diplomacy as well as the regime's ailing economy, not to mention the pandemic and reports of heavy flooding. His disappearance from the public eye earlier this year also caused speculation that he may be gravely ill, and his sister Kim Yo-jong could become his potential successor. These rumours resurfaced after South Korea's National Intelligence Service reported last week that Kim Jong-un has divided some of his responsibilities to senior regime members, including his younger sister, which is an unprecedented move for the North Korean leadership. So the question is Kim Jong-un cracking under pressure? Today, I'm joined by Soo Kim, policy analyst for the RAND Corporation and former analyst for the CIA. We also have Ramon Pacheco-Pardo, a Korea specialist and reader of international relations at King's College London. It's lovely to see you both. And, well, with ladies being first, I'm going to address my first question to you, Soo, if that's okay. Well, last week, South Korea's intelligence agency reported that Kim Jong-un has split some of his responsibilities with top Pyongyang officials, including his sister Kim Yo-jong, of course. And they said that the reason for this now, Soo, is that it's to avoid blame if something goes wrong. Now, do you think that reason is convincing? Is it really because Kim Jong-un wants to divide responsibility and shift the blame to his sister?
So when I saw the news reports talking about that story, I had questions. The first question is, what news report are they talking about? The second is the legitimate excuse that they gave was that Kim Jong-un was under stress. For a North Korean leader, the supreme leadership to be under stress, and for a South Korean an intel report or any official document that cites that as a reason for a North Korean dictator to want to defer and to delegate certain powers to his advisors, to me that puts into question the notion of the monolithic North Korean leadership. So I questioned that. And I also questioned what were actually the underlying reasons for this so-called delegation of powers to Kim Yo-jong and several officials to handle the economic and the political crises or the political issues. To me, it seems like there is something that's amiss about the state of Kim Jong-un and also perhaps the state of Kim Yo-jong as well. So it surfaced a lot of questions. The other thing I forgot to bring out is that the report was actually cited by a member of the opposition party who was part of the Intelligence Committee. So there were a lot of questions about the sourcing, the timing of it, the nature of it. To delegate and to share responsibilities with his sister, to me, it seemed like it really jeopardizes, and it also puts us more skeptical about Kim Jong-un's health situation, whether or not he has the complete authority. The assumption is that he does, but again, there's so many underlying factors that really haven't surfaced, and I don't think we're going to see that until probably a couple months or a few months down the road, when North Korea feels prepared to not even directly admit what's going on, but indirectly leak out certain hints for the people to pick up.
Well, now South Korean intelligence has been wrong before about North Korea, obviously, so we can't take everything that they say 100% really. Well, Dr. Pacheco-Pardo, how do you see this? A former aide to the late President Kim Dae-jung has said after that report that Kim is probably delegating his responsibilities to senior officials either because he's too ill, because a North Korean leader would never loosen his grip on power unless he was physically unable to do so, or he was removed through a coup. So how do you see this?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at the sourcing, it is not very clear how many sources we have for this. It seems that there's only one source coming from China behind this rumor about his potential illness, Kim Jong-un's potential illness. So I think we have to take this with a pinch of salt, really. Well, what I do think, though, is that it is obvious that over the past few weeks and few months, Kim Yo-jong has become more prominent in the regime. If you look at the reports coming out of the North Korean media, clearly she was portrayed as one of the people or the person who was actually leading policy towards South Korea. She has also been quoted in North Korean media making some comments about the US. So clearly the North Korean media wants to show that she's more relevant to the regime than she was, for example, a year ago, right after the summit, the failed summit in Hanoi between Kim Jong-un and President Trump. So I think that there is something going on in North Korea. They have other leaders have been cited as well by North Korean media, now by South Korean intelligence services, as if not sharing power with Kim Jong-un, at the very least being in charge of implementation of policy, economic policy, South Korea, the US. So I don't know if we can talk about a collective leadership, but we can definitely say that Kim Jong-un's power is not the same as his grandfather, for example, and that's very clear. So he has to take into consideration the views of other people in his regime.
Well, as you said, it's undeniable that Kim Yo-jong's status has risen very prominently over the last few months, over the past year, really. And, well, Sue, the NIS, the Korean spy agency, says that the regime hasn't made Kim Yo-jong a successor yet, and reports that she hasn't really been in any high-level meetings as of late. What do you think her position is at the moment? And do you think there is a possibility that she will eventually become her elder brother's successor?
So I think that under the static situation where the Paekju bloodline is going to continue, and Kim Jong-un does not have any of-age successors. So the natural, logical next election would be his sister, of course. In that framework, she does certainly seem to be the de facto number two. But I also think that, one, given the extended period of absence of Kim Jong-un, we saw him appear at various meetings, but we haven't really seen or heard his voice, actually, to really verify whether that was actually him. And also there were questions from other sources saying that nobody really knows what has become of Kim Yo-jong as well. So I think we're actually working with a lot of assumptions about what we expect to see in a North Korean leadership structure. The fact of the matter is she probably is the number two. But again, if there are underlying circumstances or new contingencies that we haven't really been actually opening our eyes to, then I think that the number two status also might be a little bit tenuous, given or understanding that there might be some internal dynamics within the North Korean leadership that we're just not privy to at this point.
Well, Dr. Pacheco-Pardo, how do you see this? What do you think Kim Jong-un's position is? Is she really number two and even on the verge of taking over?
I think bloodline, as Sue mentioned, is very important, right? She has the Kim bloodline, so that makes her probably the primary candidate to take over if something happens to Kim Jong-un. I wouldn't venture to say because what the health status of Kim Jong-un actually is. I mean, it is true that this year there has been less appearances in North Korean media, so we have seen Kim less than we have seen him in previous years. But this is also true that it doesn't prove anything. It might be that he's like many other leaders across the world, right? She has to deal with COVID-19, for example. He doesn't want to get infected. So it could be something as simple as that, and we don't know because of the opaque regime that we have in North Korea. But if at some point we have to talk about succession, I think most analysts would say that, yes, she's really the top candidate, even though she's female, and we know how women are treated in North Korea. They have secondary status, but she has the bloodline. And I think that matters more than her gender in this particular case.
And Sue, well, North Korea, it surprisingly admitted that its economy has been faltering in the face of what it called sustaining severe internal and external situations, which most likely refer to US-led sanctions, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the recent flooding that's probably been devastating in the north. How bad do you think the situation has got in North Korea to the extent that the leadership has admitted all isn't well?
So I think you raise a very interesting point in that we're connecting economics to the leadership. It's bad to the point where this is the first time that the leadership admitted that the economy is pretty much deteriorating since 1993. At this point where there's uncertainties about Kim Jong-un's health status, whether this is all speculation, the succession issues, for the regime to admit that there are certain deficiencies in its ability to provide for its people. I think from the internal domestic angle, it might perhaps cause more anxiety among North Korean population. But I also think that the admission of failure, economic failure, is it really hits at the question and the inviolability of the North Korean leadership, the dictator. So for North Korea to admit it, and then later on perhaps try to backtrack, I just don't think that there might be any wiggle room for North Korea to do that. So my question is, now that they've actually admitted that there is concerns about the economic viability of the country, how are they going to move forward in terms of messaging to the external audience, and also finding a way to bring some kind of provision or assurances to the public to make sure that they don't question or raise any speculations about the future of the country and actually the future of the leadership as well?
Well, Dr. Pacheco-Pardo, in going forward, whether Kim Jong-un is ill or not, or whatever it is that's going on with his sister, do you think that Kim Jong-un can get his regime and the economy in shape?
Well, he needs sanctions relief. That's quite clear. I think as long as there are sanctions on North Korea and these are being implemented, yes, North Korea can survive, what we call economic survival, with some help from China. But the economy cannot grow to the extent that Kim Jong-un has promised his population. I mean, he promised, going back to his Pyongyang policy, he promised that there would be economic development. And from what we know, the economic situation has improved, at least in Pyongyang, but it has deteriorated over the past couple of years since sanctions were implemented. And now, obviously, this year with COVID-19, we saw how the border with China was closed. So in the border region, there are economic problems, and there have been reports coming out from this region that the economic situation inside the country is not good. So I think that North Korea ultimately will need to get a proper agreement with the US, a proper process going on in which he will have to move towards denuclearization. We're not talking about full denuclearization, but he will have to take steps towards denuclearization in exchange for sanctions relief and economic support from the international community, not only from South Korea, from China, from Russia, but also from other countries, maybe from the World Bank, for example, from international institutions as well. So that's the key element here, the agreement with the US that is implemented that leads to sanctions relief that can help North Korea to improve its economy and move beyond economic survival, which is the state of the economy right now.
Well, Sue, North Korea in the past, it's used denuclearization talks as a bargaining chip, really, to get sanctions relief or some kind of aid. But it looks like there won't be serious negotiations with the United States for the time being, with America's presidential election in November. Do you think the North might throw President Trump a lifeline and salvage their talks, or do you think they're going to wait it out until they're certain just who's going to be in the Oval Office for the next 4 years?
So let's assume that there are indeed some frictions or fissures within North Korean leadership to the point where Kim Jong-un, or perhaps even his sister, is unable to really come to the table to meet with President Trump. In that case, North Korea might have a lot more to lose by meeting with the U.S. president. Instead of hoping and banking on sanctions relief, it might not even reach that point. So again, I think the fundamental question that we need to ask here is what is going on with the North Korean leadership? What's the status of the health situation? What is succession? And I think once that is solved, we'll be able to figure out or come to a better understanding as to what prospects North Korea has and what it's interested in when it comes to dealing with the United States. But putting that aside, let's assume that everything is sort of business as usual in North Korea, and Kim Jong-un is actually weighing the pros and cons of another summit with President Trump. Again, I think it's just a matter of how confident Kim Jong-un is in terms of actually getting what he wants. Having gone through the failure of the Hanoi summit, he might not want to come back unless he's actually fully prepared to deal with a counteroffer or counterproposal. So there are a lot of things that are at play, and I think we also have to consider the role of South Korea as well and how much it's willing to expend in terms of its resources and its interests to bring another U.S.-North Korea summit into fruition.
Well, for now, it looks like everything's up in the air, as usual. But this is, I'm afraid, where we're going to have to wrap up the discussion today. That was Sue Kim, policy analyst at Rand Corporation, and Ramon Pacheco-Pade, a career specialist and reader of international relations at King's College London. Thank you both so much for your incredible insights and for joining us from Washington, D.C. and London.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, thank you for watching. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with expert analysis on the global economy, so don't miss that. Have a good day or evening wherever you are. Goodbye.